Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/am I the asshole for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my thoughts and opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Hunter Yumi. Am I the asshole for telling my roommate his girlfriend can't stay over every weekend after she ate all my food? Again? Reddit has deemed this person not the asshole. So, I own my own apartment and rent out the second room to a buddy of mine. Everything was cool at first, but lately, his girlfriend has been staying over every weekend. I wouldn't mind so much if it wasn't for the fact that every time she's here, she helps herself to my stuff, namely my food. I meal prep for the week, and I buy my own groceries. It's not like I don't share sometimes, but I've noticed that every weekend she's here, a bunch of my food is gone. Snacks, leftovers, even stuff like my eggs and bread. Just gone. I've tried hinting at it, like casually mentioning how much food I go through, but it keeps happening. Last weekend, I had a really long week at work, so I treated myself to some nice takeout and planned to save half of it for lunch the next day. The next morning, I opened the fridge and it's gone. I texted my roommate and he said, "Oh, my girlfriend was hungry, so she ate it. Sorry, man." That was the last straw. I told him we needed to talk and said that while I'm okay with her visiting sometimes, she can't keep staying over every weekend and eating my food. I told him it's not fair, especially since she's not contributing to groceries or utilities. He got defensive, saying that since he pays rent, she should be able to stay over whenever, and I'm making a big deal out of just a few snacks. I stood my ground and told him she needs to stop coming over so often unless they start buying their own food and being more considerate. Now, he's pissed at me, and I'm getting the cold shoulder. Am I the asshole for putting my foot down after his girlfriend kept eating all my food? So when it comes to roommates and food, never hint, be upfront. Like, trust me, I get that confronting roommates about food missing is definitely a difficult topic to broach, but at the same time, like if you're just hinting and like, "Oh man, where are my snacks gone?" and just shit like that, and then turn around and just out of nowhere go from 0 to 120 like that and just be like, "Hey, what the fuck is wrong with you?" They're gonna get defensive because in their eyes, you went from being okay with it and never made a stink about it previously to just suddenly bring the hammer down out of nowhere. Like, don't get me wrong, they are in the wrong here. It is not fun to have expectations to come home or be done with work and have a specific snack only to find out that it was consumed by a roommate or one of their guests. Especially if you have pre-prepared meals and they're just eating those or taking your shit that you paid for and not giving you any compensation. Not only is it money that you're losing, but it's also time, and that's not fair. And all you're asking is for them just to be considerate of your food and not, fuck up your week and take all your shit. Honestly, just bring up the fact that if they keep this up, you're gonna start charging them for the food that you're missing. So, not the asshole, but probably next time be more direct and don't just rely off of giving subtle hints here and there. Am I the asshole for telling daughter-in-law I won't watch her older kids so she could take the baby on vacation? Reddit has deemed this person the asshole. Let's find out why. My son and daughter-in-law have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. The girls are 3 and almost 1, and her son is 4. I've always believed she favors the youngest. With the older 2, she was going back to work at 12 weeks and had them in daycare all day every day, didn't breastfeed, and just seemed disinterested in becoming a parent. It's night and day with this baby though. She quit her job so the baby wouldn't be in daycare. She's into attachment parenting, refused to even try formula for this one, and refused to go anywhere without her. They're going to move for my son's job and are taking the weekend to look at houses and explore the area. My daughter-in-law asked if I could take the older 2, and when I asked about the baby, she said the baby would be coming with them. I asked why she was taking the baby and not the older 2, and she said it would be so much easier. She doesn't have to worry about the kids running around the staged houses, getting bored after touring 5 houses, getting tired, etc., and that the baby will happily stay in the carrier or in her stroller. She also mentioned that the baby has never been away from her and she doesn't want to put her through 2 nights away from mom yet. She also wants to take the baby out and she thinks it'll be easier to check out the kid places with only 1 kid. I refused. I told her that I think it's favoritism to take 1 kid on vacation and leave the others at home, especially when she already has a history of treating her better than the other kids. The other kids would love to go on this trip and they won't understand why their mom left them but brought their sister. She says I have no right to criticize her parenting and that she does not have a favorite. I refused to budge and told her I'd take all of them or none. She has a friend watching the older 2 now and told her that I'm not allowed to see the kids this weekend because she thinks I'll talk about her to the kids and cause problems between her and the kids. My son thinks she's overreacting, but he also thinks I shouldn't have said anything because I know she had PPD with the first two. Ooh, fuck, man. Oh, fuck you. And she feels guilty about not being a good mom to the first two. Am I the asshole for telling her she's favoring the baby and refusing to watch the older two so she could take the baby on a vacation? See, originally I was going to try to break it down to the bare essentials so that way I could kind of take the middle ground here and be like, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but this is actually what's happening. But after the fact that you recognize that she had PPD and is trying to make up for that, because, okay, hold on. So let me break the timeline down. So basically what I'm hearing is, son has a new job. Wife recently quit her job and is now becoming a stay-at-home parent. This probably has a lot to do with the move. It lines up almost perfectly. She has previously had PPD, but does not with this child and wants to try to make up for that. Her staying at home does not mean she's favoring the infant. She's around for all three of the children now. It's not just one of them. She gets to be in all three of their lives equally by being a stay-at-home mother, which is her right and her choice to choose. The child is also drinking breast milk instead of formula. So yeah, if she doesn't have the proper equipment to pump out the breast milk for the child, then yeah, it does make sense why a 2-day gap isn't necessarily within the cards. Also, it's not a vacation. They are going to houses and exploring the area. This is more of a chore than it is a vacation. Toddlers are definitely going to be scurrying around and doing a lot of nonsense, and yeah, they're going to get bored and cause chaos and probably cause problems. That's just a reasonable thing to have precautions against, which it makes sense as to why she would want them to be staying with someone else for the time being. And a 1-year-old, or an almost 1-year-old in this case, isn't going to have that problem because they're going to be in a stroller the entire time. And you said no, one or all, despite there being very clear reasons for the baby needing to be with the mother, that being breast milk, and essentially drawing a line like, nope, it's one or all. And then she finds someone else, and then you begin to complain that she doesn't want you to see them. That's, buddy, buddy, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And then mentioning that you're fully aware that she's previously had PPD and calling it favoritism? Like, seriously? Like, it would be one thing if PPD was not in the equation here, because that would definitely give OP some more wiggle room to their reasoning. But the fact that PPD is not mentioned until the very end of the second to last sentence tells a lot about your reasoning here. Either you are incapable of connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture, or you are actively refusing to, which puts the malice onto your end. But of course, if you disagree with me, I would love to see why, or perhaps if you have more to add, of course, don't be afraid to comment it. I try to make sure I read almost all of the comments, and yeah, I enjoy seeing what everyone has to say. Throw RA opposite poet. Am I the asshole for kicking my mother out of my wedding after she brought my ex as her +1? Reddit has deemed this person not the asshole. I, male 30, started seeing June, female 29, about 3 years ago. My mother has never really liked June for a couple of reasons. The main one being the fact that June didn't let my mom push her around. She kept firm boundaries, which I really admired, and she even helped me do the same. My mom hated this, calling June controlling and wishing I hadn't broken up with my previous girlfriend Margot, who my mom loved. I was with Margot for 5 years and it was horrible. Margot was very controlling and manipulative and always guilted me into things I wasn't comfortable with, but thanks to support from friends and my sister, I was able to leave her. It was hard, but I had help and my life has improved since. My mom was very upset with this, but relationships didn't last, so she eventually let it go, until I started dating June about a year ago. When June and I announced our engagement, my mom didn't freak out, which was weird considering my mom hates June. She was very calm, but I just took it as she was finally accepting this, so I didn't think much of it. Everything was fine and smooth, up until the wedding. I gave both my parents +1s to the wedding since they both remarried after I graduated college. So I'm not close to their spouses, but gave them the option of inviting them. We had a very small ceremony, just immediate family and a few close friends. After the ceremony, me and June went to take pictures and then met back with everyone we invited to the reception, which was pretty big. When we got there, my sister and June's best friend / maid of honor ran up to us in a panic. Before they even said anything, I spotted it. My mom was at the table with my dad's wife, and Margot. I wanted to freak out, but June kept me calm. I walked over, pulled them both aside, and simply told them to leave. My mom tried to explain Margot and I are soulmates, and June is just in the way of true love. but I wasn't hearing it. I didn't care. Just got my best friends to escort them out, and I returned to the party where, luckily, after a few moments, I was able to relax and enjoy it. I really didn't think this would all turn into something huge, but me and June just got back from our honeymoon where we didn't have our phones. And seeing mine, I saw hundreds of texts from multiple family members. They all think I was an asshole for kicking my mom out of her only son's wedding. For the record, she was there for the ceremony, but apparently was really upset she was kicked from the reception. Here's a summary of my family's thoughts. Something I could have just ignored Margot and didn't have to freak out. A few others, including my dad, think I should have just kicked Margot and let my mom stay. But after the stunt my mom pulled, I didn't want her there either. I'm starting to second guess myself since everyone is really mad. June and my sister are on my side, but I fear my dad may be right and I should have just let my mom stay and made Margot leave. So I've come to Reddit. Am I the asshole? The thing is your mom is more than likely selling them a story that, makes her appear to be the victim. You just simply brought Margot and you were suddenly kicked out with no explanation. No inclusion of the fact that she tried to break up your wedding and convince you to leave June for your quote-unquote soulmate who was, by all means, an abusive ex. If she actually wanted to take her only son's wedding seriously, she wouldn't have pulled this shit. If my mother brought my abusive ex to a future wedding of mine and said that they were my soulmate, I would kick her out too. I'm not gonna tolerate that shit. And neither should OP. Your mother should be apologizing to you, not the other way around. You did nothing wrong. And more than likely, the only reason why your family is giving you shit is because your mother probably turned around and sold them a sob story. Tell them the truth and see how the tides turn. Also, on a somewhat lighter note, from the title, I initially assumed this would be about the bride of the wedding seeing her mother bring her ex-boyfriend as her plus one. That's what I thought the story was gonna be at first, but this is a lot more fucked up and tragic, holy hell. Throw RA Halloween Dread. Am I the asshole for telling my mom it wasn't cute or funny to dress me as a hot dog instead of a princess? Not the asshole, Reddit has deemed this post. So there's this new Target commercial going around where a little girl dresses as a hot dog, and it came on while my family was watching a scary movie. I'm 20 female, am home from college for the weekend, and brought my boyfriend. And my mother, 57 female, decided it'd be hilarious to mention that she'd made me a hot dog costume as a kid. Except the way that she told the story, it was my request. She said that all the girls wanted to be Disney princesses, but I had asked to be a hot dog. And so she'd gone out of her way to make me that costume. This is not what happened, and I said as much. What actually happened is that I wanted to be Snow White, and had told everyone, including the teachers, that I was going to be Snow White. I was obsessed with that movie as a kid. To the point, by the way, where I would actually get invested in doing chores because I was cleaning up just like Snow White. My dad and I would watch that movie all the time, and I was very excited to be Snow White for Halloween, especially because my ballet studio was doing a special princess dance for Halloween, and we'd all sign up for special princess slots, and I'd shown up early with my dad the week before so I could get to be Snow White. My mother decided that she wanted to be quirky and that Snow White was a bad role model after I got in trouble for trying to cook dinner for my family. I was about 8, and I tried to make hot dogs, like how she made food for the dwarves in the movie, and I made a mess. My mom surprised me on the day of this with a crappy hot dog suit, and told me if I didn't wear it, she'd never let me watch Snow White again. She took a million pictures, the other girls teased me for months, and it was one of the most humiliating moments of my childhood. I told the real story and mentioned that I got through the day by pretending that she was the evil queen making me dress in rags. But the rags happened to be a garbage meat costume. She got really quiet after that, and after we left, my brother says she was crying and looking at the pictures from that Halloween. I didn't want to make my mom cry, but it's a shitty memory for me, and it felt like she was trying to humiliate me all over again in front of my boyfriend. Too long didn't read, I called my mom out for forcing me to be a hot dog for Halloween and humiliating me as a child after she brought up the story pretending I'd want to be. Am I the asshole? Very much no. I hate to quote like a cheesy 2000s movie here, but Halloween is one of the few nights as a kid where you get to be whoever you want. Save the costumes that you want to gawk at and laugh at for your dogs and cats. That's kind of what they're for on Halloween, is to be goobers that you get to dress up in goofy ways and have a good time. That's when you should be taking photos and gawking at them, because they're not going to know what you're doing, they're just happy to get the attention. But a child who's 8 years old, who's being forced to dress up as a hot dog when they want to be Snow White because that's their role model? Yeah, that's gonna leave a long-lasting memory. And not the good kind either. Now it's time for the depressing part. There is a chance this story might be fake because back in 2016 there was a viral story about a hot dog princess. And, it was about 8 years ago, and a lot of the details do match up with the story, so there is a chance this could be, a fake story. Or perhaps a lot of the details are pretty close, and it just happens to be a coincidence, because that stuff does in fact happen. I'm giving the benefit of a doubt that it is a coincidence, because this also is a good opportunity to give the lesson of, just because you have a cute and quirky idea for your kids to wear on Halloween doesn't mean that's necessarily what they want to wear, and it can definitely lead to lasting memories that they're not going to be fond of. Let your kids dress up for what they want to be during Halloween because, that's what they want to be for Halloween. Plenty Blue Jay 273. Am I the asshole for being the reason my grandparents refused to help my dad anymore and laughing when he and his wife complained about it? Reddit has deemed this person not the asshole. My mom died when I, 16 male, was 7. She left me an inheritance that my dad was put in charge of. The money was supposed to be for my future, and nobody was supposed to touch it unless I really needed it, and it was pretty specific. I read through it 5 months ago when shit went down. My dad got married again when I was 10, and he has an 8-year-old stepdaughter and now a 4-year-old daughter with his wife, Louise. My half-sister was diagnosed with a rare condition when she was 2. It was always clear something was wrong, but they had a really hard time figuring out what it was. Doctors would say she'd be fine when she was older. This condition isn't life-threatening. Like, she won't die from it, but it could potentially leave her permanently disabled in a bad way. A few months ago, they found out about this hard-to-get-into treatment for it, but it was expensive. There was/is ways to get help for paying for it, but that takes longer. So my dad decided he would use the inheritance mom left me to pay for it. He tried asking me, but he was going to do it anyway, and when I said no, he told me as much. He then shamed me for saying no, for putting college before the health of my half-sister. Louise was in the room with us, but she wasn't talking before I said no. She asked me how I could look at my half-sister at the life she will have if we don't do something and say no. I told my dad I would never forgive him if he took the money. After I read her will, grandparents had a copy, I brought up the fact that it was only for my needs it could be spent before. He told me mom was dead and he hoped she'd understand. I told him I never would. He told me I'd understand when I'm older. I told him I hated him, and I told Louise that she'd better never speak to me again because I found it disgusting. She'd encourage stealing from me and taking my mom's money. I told my grandparents what dad did. They're my mom's parents, but had stayed friendly with dad, and there were times they would help him. They shared stuff with him all the time, and grandpa would look at dad's car for free if anything was wrong. That all stopped when I told them. Dad couldn't figure out why until he confronted them about it last week. They told him he had some nerve stealing from me, taking their daughter's money and spending it on his child. My dad was mad they didn't understand and support his decision. He confronted me about it and complained about what I did. I laughed and told him I had warned him I would never forgive him for it. He asked how I got to be so heartless and selfish. I told him I would never forget what he did. Am I the asshole? See, this does kind of suck because I understand the father just wanted to do right by one of his children, but in the process of doing that, he did fuck over his other child, the one that he had with his first wife, by taking money that his first wife had left for his son and used it on the child that he had with his new wife. Definitely see if you can get your father to agree to some kind of payment plan and get it notarized. If not, go through a lawyer. He did steal from you, but I have a really hard time of looking at the father and just blatantly saying that he's an asshole. His intentions were in the right place. It's not like he was blowing the money on a cruise or some frivolous thing. He was putting the money to good use. He had no right to do so. It was very much a shitty thing for him to do to his son, but if the father is truly sorry for stealing from his son, he should be okay with setting up some kind of repayment plan. Because this does get into a weird territory of what is legally right versus a morality aspect of it. And I don't know. Like, do y'all remember Sam Raimi's, Sandman from Spider-Man 3? He was actively stealing from banks and whatnot, but it was for the cause of trying to pay for his daughter's illness. It wasn't something where he was using it on himself. He was a sympathetic villain, and you could understand why he would make the choices he would make. Like, we as humans, we can empathize with the Robin Hood aspect of things, of taking from the rich to subsidize something that's, worthwhile, but that does change a little bit when Robin Hood suddenly starts targeting the poor to redistribute to the more unfortunate poor, let alone members of his own family. And to summarize, OP is in the right to be upset, The father is not in the right to take the money, but I do understand the father's plight and the reasoning behind it. Does it suck and does it show favoritism and kind of tell the son like, hey, my new family means more to me than you? Like, yeah, that definitely sucks a lot, especially when technically the father has no legal right to that money. I'd be very interested to hear some more opinions on this because this is definitely a situation where you can be legally in the right, but possibly perhaps in some eyes not necessarily morally in the right. And I'd be curious to hear some opinions, and I ask that everyone who might want to make a comment to walk 2 moons in someone's shoes and kind of see how they might feel about it. Let me know what you all think, and if you do disagree with my take on it, please let me know. But I do ask that you're respectful about it. I think it's healthy for people to be introduced to viewpoints or opinions that they don't agree with and to engage with those, myself included. Guilty God of Goo. Am I the asshole for giving my daughter's things back that were taken away as punishment? Reddit has deemed this person not the asshole. I'm 31 and my husband is 30. Our daughter is 7, and she found a puppy in the front yard and played with it. Turns out it belonged to our neighbors, who were looking for it. They accused her of stealing it, and my husband gave her extra chores. She refused to do them, saying she didn't steal the puppy. The neighbors came to apologize a bit later as their son confessed to losing the puppy on a walk when he took its leash off. That's how it ended up in our yard. I came home that evening and my husband explained this. He said she should be disciplined for not doing the chores. I said she was right to not accept unearned punishment. He said it's the principle, and she should listen to her father. I said I would rather die than teach her that she should lay down and accept mistreatment. We argued and he called me unreasonable. Am I the asshole? This is a bit complicated, but hear me out. So now the first thing I want to do is I want to divorce the action from the punishment real quick and just get into the parenting philosophies of that. While I initially agree with the mother's approach, I understand the father's approach because my parents were like this. So let me play devil's advocate real quick. The idea is that you want to make sure they respect the punishment, but at the same time, if you did fuck up and the punishment was not earned, you need to make up for that in some way. Something that the child likes or some way to show that you did in fact screw up and you are willing to admit that. That's the important part of that. If you have them go through with a punishment that they did not earn, there needs to be some kind of equalizer. The goal is to make sure that the child takes any punishment they receive, no matter how fair it was, seriously, while also making sure that if you did screw up, you admit to it and make things right. The logic of this being is that you don't want to end up in a position where if punishments are revoked willy-nilly because of reasons that the child gives, then punishments may not be taken seriously in the future. Because a very valid argument for the other side of this equation is that if you're not willing to admit fault or take accountability for a misplaced punishment, you're pretty much creating an environment where the child is just going to expect to be punished no matter what, even if they're guilty or not. I mean, at that point, you pretty much create a situation where they're either going to be beaten down to the point where they're afraid to breathe wrong, or they're going to realize, I'm going to be punished no matter what, so I may as well do whatever the hell I want. Which is why, in this mentality, it's always good to rectify your mistakes and ensure that you are willing to admit fault and where you screw up. I personally lean more towards the mother's philosophy on this because I think it does make more sense to a child's mind, but I can understand the principal argument from the father's side. However, I don't think the father had any intention to make things right by their child after realizing there was a mistake. And that's the problem with that, and that's kind of where this begins to dissolve. I was playing devil's advocate for the father's philosophy, but not for his actions. If the father at any point is not willing to admit to his daughter that he made a mistake and he was wrong, you walk into the situation I was talking about earlier where they're either going to be beaten down or become an absolute terror. Now, of course, a lot of this is built upon my own personal logic and philosophy and what I grew up with and what I would want to do differently from how I was raised. And if you disagree, please do not be afraid to let me know in the comments. I just ask that you take all of my words into account because I have seen comments where they go for small little snippets of my sentences and argue against those, where later in the audio, I actually completely argue against my own points because sometimes I play devil's advocate in these. Now, the next part of this, because when I started, I divorced the topics from each other of the action and the punishment, it does get really complicated when you have your neighbors saying, hey, your daughter stole our puppy. That claim in its own is already ridiculous, and the fact the father was already willing to jump to a stranger or their neighbor's defense against their daughter's actions when it is far more likely that the dog just simply got lost and ended up in their front yard to go play with another human, and that's how it ended up, rather than your daughter going into their backyard and swiping an animal. Like, the father should have definitely used more judgment on that account, because the neighbors made a pretty ridiculous accusation without any evidence when Honestly, it is far more likely, as what actually happened, for the dog to just become lost, or run away, or end up where they shouldn't be. And like, I understand that kids can definitely lie at times. But the lie in question of this situation would be the child lying that they did not go and break into the neighbor's backyard, steal a puppy, and then play with said puppy in their front yard on full display. Like, that logic does not track. So that's also another knock on the father for not putting that together, and it kind of adds to the ridiculousness of applying a punishment and just, yeah. That's why I felt it was important to divorce the two, because the punishment in question is, I understand the logic that the father is trying to follow, but the reason why the punishment was dished out was ridiculous as hell. Like, yeah, kids can lie, but come on. Have a little bit of faith in your daughter that she's not going to steal a puppy from a backyard and then just be playing with it in the front yard. And if you walk into the comment section and say, "Nuh-uh, I'm not a liar, I would never lie as a kid, I was the most truthful child ever," well, congratulations. But I guarantee to you, you've had one interaction with another child your age at the time that definitely lied to you. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code ODDS at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code ODDS directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup, and you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code ODDS at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.